So, good morning, everyone. It's Dr. John here. I am happy to be with you today to continue the discussion on an existential approach to depression. And it occurred to me after the first video that the videos I'm making tend to be more for the therapist. So I've got to pivot a little bit in future videos to address more of the practical side or practical application, if you will, so that the videos feel more relevant for um, a broader audience. Okay, so let's get started again. This is part two. First part covered more foundations where we sort of hit on, not sort of, we hit on conceptual foundations and the core existential themes. So as a way to cultivate the memorization of those themes, I'll repeat them. And again, this is just one version, so it's not the version. So freedom and responsibility, meaning and purpose, isolation and connection, death and finitude, and authenticity. So a fuller description of those is talked about in part one. This video, we're going to focus on therapeutic stance and practical interventions. Going to keep it short, and then the part three will go over goals of therapy, and then we will in part three. Yeah, part three will just have to be goals, so that's going to be a short one, I think, but I'll expand on that perhaps. And then we're going to get more philosophical. So I'm going to have to distinguish in the categories, what is the psychology view, what is more a philosophical view, and then therapist content, more regular application content. So those are all what's to come. Okay, let's get started. I tend to meander in my discussion, so therapeutic stance. So the sort of what's that? The atmosphere, I might be a way to put it. So there's a curiosity, a phenomenological exploration. So again, phenomenology is really referring to like the seeing it from the lens of the person, if you will, versus like some more objective lens, like me as a therapist, trying to hold the view that my reality is absolute reality. It's more entering the world of the client. That's a oversimplification. We'll have to get into that further. So the phenomenological exploration is where we're trying to really attend to in a deep way how this person is experiencing and living this depression rather than reducing it down to symptoms. So, in a more mainstream psychological view, we would have depression conceptualized as DSM-5 criteria, is it met, not met, etc. This view is really looking at, well, we might have the criteria met, you know, to get that insurance reimbursement, whatever. But the existential therapist is more concerned about, like, how is this depression showing up in your everyday life? Like, are you turning away from experience? Are you living in what I think of as like a condensed reality? Are you not getting out of bed, so to speak? And what is it like to not be able to get out of bed, to like try to will yourself up to your feet and to move into the day, the challenge of making that happen? So that's kind of what I'm referring to by the phenomenological exploration. Then Dialogical presence. So, okay, this is vital. The presence of the therapist trying to offer an authentic encounter. So we want to get rid of, to whatever extent is possible, that unbridgeable gap between person to person, uh, that sense of isolation, right? Existential isolation, and really validate and affirm the person's existence. I might say patient, client, person. I'll go with person. Um, so we want to show up in a way that we're there, right? We're not this removed, quote unquote, doctor who's got the computer, looks at you from time to time, and then takes notes. Next question, takes notes. That's one way of doing things. This is more being really, really there. Normalization of the existential struggle. Yes, we're all caught up in the confrontation with the conditions, universal human conditions of existence. So it is not this person's individual angst, if you will, or individual isolation. It's recognizing that all human beings must make sense out of these givens. And again, this is based in a more Eurocentric view, Eastern traditions. There's overlap and connections, but there might be a little bit of a different conceptualization there. We'll have to explore that one in a different video. Okay, so it's really like depathologizing, if that's a word. Then we want to invite in this notion of freedom. So we must choose. To not choose is a choice. Empowering the person to recognize there are choices that need to be made, even in light of whatever constraints there are that might be out of control. So we don't want to fall into stagnation. We want to take action, be alive, be awake, be aware, be present, take the necessary existential risks, if you will. I'm not talking about being like a loose cannon. I'm saying, like, recognizing where your growth edges are and then working those edges and taking yourself a bit further, expanding consciousness. Meaning making. This, I think, is really, 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 really essential. I take the view that life's got to have meaning. Some people might not feel that way, but there is a meaning in. There's likely a meaning in their denying meaning. The meaning of denying meaning is like that's serving some sort of psychological function for that individual. So working on that, figuring out, like, well, what is it to say that there really is no meaning in existence, and understanding how they're living that, working with that. So here we can get into values. What is their vocation? What is that term? Reason for being, if you will, and living in alignment with that. That's how vitality comes back. All right, so let's talk some practical interventions. So naturally, we find ways to explore the existential themes, the givens. So we might inquire about how the person is holding an awareness of finitude or of death? How are they aware of their own freedom? How are they choosing, not choosing? What kind of meaning are they making? And how are they in some way feeling this quality of isolation? And maybe they're trying to run from it, turn away from it, avoid it, fill their time, so to speak, with some kind of constant activity or chatter, for example, as a way to not really be be in that place of isolation. Okay, so I kind of hit on the next point. Uh, working values. There's very structured ways of doing that. A values living questionnaire. Order those up, discuss them, talk about them. Find out, well, how are you doing according to living to these values, etc. Responsibility framing. So encouraging the awareness of their self efficacy, self agency, taking action, maybe break it down into manageable steps. If it feels like a big project, how do you break that down into bite-sized pieces that you can work and get to? Of course, narrative work. So this is, I think, so valuable. And we often, some views in therapy are more like, well, let's kind of focus on, what's in front of me. Like, what are the symptoms here? How do we start to reduce those symptoms, and then work that way? Whereas, like, maybe not all existential approaches might do this, but I really like to hear, well, what is the story of this person, and tell it to me however you want to tell it to me. That might be linear, that might be backwards, that might be, well, move around according to whatever comes to mind. I like the whatever is in the front of your mind kind of prompt. Like, where are you at? Like, what's alive? What's happening? And then there we move into the deeper areas, because I believe that it's all connected in some way. And then cultivating patience and an unfolding is really important. I don't think, well, there's so much pressure on modern therapy to, well, how fast can you get this thing done? Like, how many sessions can we get this done? Well, insurance is only going to pay for this many sessions, blah, blah, blah. You know, this work is deep. It takes time. Let it unfold, roll with any resistances that are coming up. We all have them. What are the defense mechanisms at work? And just being able to be with the process. The next one says being with. Um, Sometimes it's just about being present, being in the space. I think therapy is a sacred space. No need to rush anything. So that's what I wanted to say today. We did this in like a little under 14 minutes. So very good work. We'll come back at it next time. We'll talk some goals. That's going to be like a quite a short one. And then we'll get a little more philosophical. And then I'd like to also, as I said, let's get practical too, because I want to be of help and um, offer some actionable steps. All right. Thank you for being here. Have a beautiful day. Peace and love. This is Dr. John with Psych in the Van.